Okay, so I'm still trying to figure out a good angle, for all of this. Um, I guess I'll just like pose for the thumbnail like this. Right? Was that good for the thumbnail? Should I be like, look shocked? This is my review for Satan's Children, which came out in 1975. And of course, you see me looking away. That's me reading what I wrote for the review. Hopefully I could get to a point where I don't have to say that all the time anymore. So, Satan's Children is a low budget movie from 1975 that is really low budget. It starts out with this actually really cool looking opening credit scene, which seems to honestly be the only cool scene in the entire movie. The film looks like it was recorded using really old cameras, probably some earlier version of color film, or, I mean, obviously, at least very cheap color cameras. The movie starts out with the main character, who is named Bobby, that is mowing the lawn, and it seems to arouse his stepsister. Yes. There's this really gross, weird, ancestral dynamic from her in the movie, which honestly seemed like a thinly disguised fetish. I don't know why they had to include that in the movie. They could have honestly just made the stepsister, whose name was Janice, I believe. They could have just made Janice like bratty, catty, and annoying without making the romantic gestures to him. Bobby is seemingly not really liked by his stepdad or stepsister that much. And after dinner one day, presumably the same day in the movie, his stepsister tries to get him in trouble. Really weird. She like takes her foot and she starts rubbing his junk with it. More weird incest stuff. I'm like, ugh. But she also tries to get him in trouble by asking what the brown bag in the closet was. Which, honestly, for me, I thought that Bobby had a bag of shit in his closet. I know, it's like, why is that what you think of? I don't know. That's just what my mind thought. What else would a brown bag of stuff, mysterious brown stuff be? A bag of mysterious brown stuff. What would you think? That's what I thought. Okay? So, anyway, the stepsister's like, what is that in the room? I was just trying to find paper. And it's like, shut up. But anyway, so Bobby's stepdad is like, go get the stuff, Bobby. And he didn't sound like Hank Hill, but he was. So Bobby goes to get the mysterious brown bag of stuff, and he goes into his, actually not the closet, it's actually in the nightstand next to his bed. And of course, it turns out just to be a bag of weed. So Bobby's like, obviously looking at it like, I'm not about to get in trouble. So he grabs the dope and leaves. He basically runs away. And he ends up, we see a montage of him walking around the city alone at night. Bobby ends up at a diner, and while sitting down drinking like a Coke or something, he gets hit on by an older man who is then told to leave by a younger, kind of greaser car guy looking kind of guy. The greaser guy makes fun of the first guy for being gay. And then he and Bobby take a ride on not Bobby, on the guy's motorcycle, which that struck me as odd because the idea of a man riding, I'm just going to call it what I've been told, the idea of a man riding bitch was always thought of like as gay for the longest time. That's what I was under the impression of. So it was ironic that, oh, we're going to make fun of this guy for being gay, and then they do something gay. I mean, is riding bitch on a motorcycle gay? I don't think so, but that's what the culture was, especially back then. I just say this as somebody who, in the past, I did sort of date a guy who rode a motorcycle. I rode on his motorcycle, and whatever. The logic doesn't make sense. So you can already see how the movie is turning out. It's not making sense. But whatever. Anyway. So the greaser guy who ends up, his name's like Jack, and they only barely say it like once. Jack takes Bobby back to his place, offers him a beer. Jack then goes to the bathroom, undresses, puts on a robe, and then he comes out and he puts a knife up to Bobby's neck. And he's like, don't say anything, da 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 da. And so then Bobby is stripped, tied up, and then Jack calls his friends and they take Bobby naked into a van and basically drive around hazing him, dumping beer on his head, and they rape him. The next day, a group of hippie looking types are seen playing some sort of bad version, I don't know, volleyball, but not really, outside. A woman named Sherry is running away from another woman who I just cannot remember the name of. And we see the second woman ended up trying to make a move on Sherry. And Sherry, not being a lesbian, didn't take kindly to the advance, and she slaps the other girl, telling her how to figure out how to like guys. So we can already see that this movie, which I want to reiterate, I don't know if I said it earlier, this movie came out in 1975, so that's the idea back then that a lot of people had about, gay shit. So anyway, the hippies stopped playing volleyball, whatever they were doing, long enough for a couple of them to see Bobby unconscious near their fence, where he is taken inside their compound. So the people that raped Bobby just like dumped his body outside the fence of the hippie compound. Sherry immediately takes an interest in Bobby because somehow she found him attractive. She's like, oh, he's cute. And I'm like, whatever. Anyway, one of the cult members, I think his name was Joshua, ends up disliking Bobby, saying, basically, Sherry immediately wants Bobby to join their cult. The guy's like, no, he can't. He's queer. And it's like, I'm going to be real. When I saw that scene in the movie, I was like, that dude has no room to talk. That guy has no room to talk. That actor has the voice. And if you know what I'm talking about, you know. If you know, you know. In fact, I'm going to tell you the truth. Sometimes the guy that played Bobby sort of seemed like he had the voice. You know what I mean? So I found that really ironic considering the homophobic themes. But anyway, in general, the movie has this ridiculous homophobic tone, especially considering what the main idea of the movie was about. Sherry and the others that I guess you could say save, which is kind of ironic to say that too, save, right? The others that save Bobby are actually a group of Satanists, but somehow they were against gay people. This struck me as odd, considering how most Abrahamic religions are anti-gay, are homophobic in, their texts. And I understand this was a different time period, and I'm not trying to be like, an activist and stuff like that. I'm just pointing out the content. I just have these contentions, like the movie didn't make sense. But I'm getting to it. So anyway, my point with this is that if Satanists are supposed to be the antithesis of Christians and the like, other Abrahamic religions, wouldn't it have made more sense for the Satanists to accept gay people? To me, I guess this idea destroys the plot. Any plot the movie has, though. So, the anti-gay stuff, I think, is the only thing that just barely holds this movie together. So the satanic idea is more of a hint as opposed to a main theme. It's like a small sprinkling of salt to a meal than a delicious seasoning, you know. The few scenes where the cult members are dressed in robes and praying to Satan are laughably bad. The costumes looked very cheap and horrible, like they barely just figured out how to use a sewing machine. You know, I wonder if the creators of the movie read anything from the Satanic Bible by Anton LaVey, because I did see some black candles that were lit in the background and a few other pieces that might have been a nod towards the Church of Satan. To me, if they did do a little research into LaVey, it wasn't very much. They likely only just skimmed through the book if they did. I mean, I could just literally see if they opened up one of the books, they probably just literally flipped through the pages like, okay, that's good enough. That's what it seemed like to me. Considering this movie came out in 1975, I think that it's a potential point. The idea of a satanic hippie cult seemed to be a nod towards the Manson family, who had only committed the Tate LaBianca murders 6 years prior to the movie's release. It seemed that it was a crappy generalization, though, of what the news press originally said about the Manson family. Where in news articles that I've clipped and read about that time period, people like Susan Atkins and the like were referred to as slaves of Satan. This movie, Satan's Children, felt like it was written by children, honestly. The plot didn't really go anywhere, and it barely had anything was explained at all. Barely anything was. There was a lot of emphasis on the gay parts and how being gay was bad. In a way, the movie appeared nearly Christian, actually, with how homophobic it was, which is really ironic, right? Because I think that, I don't know, now that I think about it just offhand, I don't know if the point of the movie was to be pro-satanic, actually. But with how horrible the movie was executed, right? The idea was executed very badly that it's almost anti-satanic. You know what I mean? So that's why I'm like, it's nearly Christian with how homophobic it was. I think that it was holding on to the idea for this time period that gay equaled sex offender. I'm probably going to get demonetized now that I said that. But I think a lot of this movie's ideas was that, you know, gay equals sex offender, which was an unfortunate idea that bigots would carry back in the past. Ironically, wouldn't Bobby's stepsister have been considered like some sort of sex offender, you know, because she was molesting him in the beginning of the movie? I think that this is kind of on that same level of, oh, it's fun, it's funny, you know, where I'm not going to get into it. I don't want to get into all like the social justice parts of it. I just bring up the homophobic stuff because it's like this, when it comes to the plot of the movie, it doesn't hold up. You know, being anti-gay Satanists is fucking stupid. It's a stupid fucking idea. I'm just going to be blunt. Homophobic Satanist sounds antithetical. You know what I mean? Anyway, I was in shock with how bad the movie was, which is ironic because I think some of the advertisements I saw from that time period, like news clippings, said you would be shocked with this movie. Just, I wasn't shocked in the way they said. You know, but anyway, it was funny to me though, because of how low quality, low budget, and low skill it was. The head honcho of the cult was named Simon, and he wasn't anywhere near as intimidating as you're supposed to think of him. Sherry and Bobby, quote unquote, fall in love after meeting for one day. And for some reason, Bobby is supposed to be considered attractive. And I know this is just personal opinion, you know, but I was just like, why is Sherry treating him like, oh my God, he's so cute. We have to keep him. And it's like, really? Really? That's all I'm just gonna say to that. I'm like, that's what you consider attractive. Anyway, to me in general, I thought that this is just me going offhand, off the top of my head, but I found that a lot of the people part of the satanic group were just laughable. They were not intimidating or scary at all. They weren't. They were just not believable. That's what I really mean. Quote unquote satanic group. I mean, they just look like a bunch of high school kids, honestly. I guess the group of people were barely college age, so I guess that's why I feel that way. But anyway, most of the cast members really looked smelly. Most of the dudes looked really smelly and like they likely needed a shower. In fact, there's this one guy, oh my God, the mutton chops on one of the henchmen that chased Bobby later in the movie. I was like, this dude looked like fucking Mungo Jerry. Oh my God, he looked like he stunk. So, I know. I sound so negative. But if you were to watch this movie, I dare you to find a positive thing about it. You know. But anyway, so in the movie, Bobby eventually runs away from the compound, which I think about it now, it's like, why? Anyway. And two henchmen that were chasing him end up in quicksand, one of them being the Mungo Jerry looking guy. Of course, it had the quicksand trope, which when I looked it up, some of the trivia for the movie said that the quicksand was made out of Quaker oats. And it was really weird looking too, really frothy and like, ugh, gross. Anyway, and speaking of, now that I'm reading this, Bobby ran away from the henchman in his underwear. And he falls like a million times. So by the time he's like about to escape or whatever, the henchmen fall in the quicksand. Bobby's underwear are completely soiled. So it looks like he's running around the forest having fucking shit himself. I was laughing. I was like, this is supposed to be like satanic and scary. This dude looks like he shit himself. What is scary about that? I mean, imagine, like, I guess it would be scary, right? Like a satanic cult member. Not that at that point Bobby was, but imagine a satanic cult member chasing you with shit in his pants. That would be scary, you know. So anyway, apparently both henchmen fall in the quicksand, and I guess we're just supposed to assume that they die, right? And Bobby takes their Jeep back home, and he starts to eat out of the fridge. His stepdad comes up to him and he starts yelling at him again, and Bobby cracks a bottle over his head and he collapses. I'm not sure if we're supposed to assume that the stepdad died or not. Once again, not really clear. But Bobby then is confronted by his stepsister, who is like, oh, hey, stop. And he like pushes her down, and then he ties her up and he throws her in the back of the truck or the Jeep, whatever it was. And then somehow Bobby makes it to the apartment of the guy, Jack, that raped him in the beginning of the movie. And all those guys that were in the van just so happened to also be there in the apartment. And Bobby kills all of them, shooting them with a shotgun that, now that I think about, I don't know where the gun came from. Anyway, Bobby then chops their heads off with saws and takes them back to the satanic cult as an offering for Simon, I guess. Like which doesn't make sense. Bobby ran away from the satanic cult and then he came back after having murdered people. You know, I mean, he murdered his rapists, but why did he take it to the satanic cult? That part is not also explained. Like, it just happens. So anyway, I assume that then Bobby's allowed to join, but he like had already kind of joined anyway because he had sex with Sherry. So anyway, the movie ends though with Bobby making love to Sherry and Bobby's stepsister is crucified. And that's how it ends. That's how the movie ends. So, once again, I was appalled when I watched this movie. I think that as time went on, this is just my assumption. I assume that the people involved with the movie must have realized how bad it was and just likely never pursued anything else in film. The only one that I think had some sort of semblance of a career was the actress that played Sherry. But even then, I don't think she's been in any sort of film or TV show in like 20 years. Most of the cast seems to have only ever appeared in this movie. And reading some of the trivia, once again from like Wikipedia and I think IMDb, the film was just like a project for what were film students. Like, I guess everyone in the movie was a film student somewhere in Florida. Unfortunately, though, if this was for a grade, I don't think they would have gotten a good grade for this movie. The story was lacking. It was barely satanic. And really, we didn't have a reason to like the main character at all. I mean, what happened to Bobby was terrible, but nothing else is really divulged about the character after he ends up at the satanic cult. In fact, none of the characters had any background story at all. It was incredibly weak. Looking through the newspaper archives, there were some interesting snippets. In 1975, Satan's Children first debuted in Illinois. So some of the advertisements, a lot of the newspaper clippings were from Illinois. And some of the advertisements marketed the movie as something that fans of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre would like, which is hilarious to me, considering that the movies are nothing alike. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is actually scary, while Satan's Children is an unintentional comedy film. Another ad claimed that the movie was the most gory and frightening film of 1975, which came from the director himself, as quoted on the ad. I'll make sure to put that on the screen. Hopefully I remember which one. Of course, so this is nowhere near true, nowhere near the most gory or frightening film. In fact, you barely see blood in this movie now that I think about it. There's barely any blood in the movie at all. What's really funny is that the ads had the tagline, "Do satanic cults really exist?" Like, as if the movie would have delved into this question further, but upon watching, the question isn't explained at all or explored at all. Bobby encounters a satanic cult, but it's not because he was trying to find one. He just so happened to end up at their compound. I couldn't find any reviews on the movie from this time period, and I think that goes to show how many people really saw it, or how few really saw it, let alone watched the whole thing to even think of reviewing it. So, I don't recommend this film. I would not recommend watching it, not even once, honestly. To me, it's just bad. I laughed. I laughed with how bad it was, but it didn't really add any enjoyment to my life. I have to give this movie 1 star and 2 slimes. Two slimes. I think that this is a slimy, bad movie. Not really, it's not even horror. It's not even horror. So to me, I'm like, don't waste your time. There's nothing scary about it. It just sucks. It just sucks. Don't even waste your time. And that's it. That's the review.